You wake up and your mouth feels like sandpaper. Your lips are cracked. Your tongue is stuck to the roof of your mouth. And the first thing you reach for is that glass of water on your nightstand. Every single morning. Maybe your doctor shrugged it off as just getting older. Maybe you have simply accepted it. But here is what most people over 60 do not realize. Waking up with a dry mouth every single day is not normal aging. It is your body sending you a very specific signal about something that is happening during those 8 hours you are asleep. Here is what makes this particularly striking from a longevity perspective. The centenarians of Okinawa, Sardinia, Ikaria, and Nicoya, documented by researchers across 40 years of study, almost never presented with chronic morning dry mouth. Not because they were lucky, because the 5 underlying conditions that cause it in the Western world were structurally absent from their daily lives. A 2022 study published in Gerodontology found that chronic dry mouth affects up to 46% of adults over age 70, making it one of the most common oral health complaints in seniors. But the same research confirmed that in the vast majority of cases, dry mouth was a symptom of an underlying condition, not a standalone problem. So, what are those underlying conditions? And why did the longest living populations on Earth never develop them? Let me walk you through each one, because knowing which one applies to you could genuinely change your health trajectory. Cause 1. Medications. The connection most doctors never mention. Over 400 prescription and over-the-counter medications list dry mouth as a known side effect. Antihistamines for allergies. Diuretics for blood pressure. Antidepressants. Bladder control medications. Certain heart medications. Common sleep aids. A 2020 review published in the Journal of the American Geriatrics Society found that seniors taking 3 or more medications simultaneously had a 63% higher likelihood of experiencing chronic dry mouth compared to those on fewer drugs. And because the average American over 65 takes between 4 and 5 prescription medications daily, this cumulative effect is enormous. The blue zone comparison here is striking. The Adventist Health Study 2, tracking 96,000 participants in Loma Linda, found that members of this community, who followed dietary and lifestyle patterns closest to the traditional blue zone model, took significantly fewer prescription medications than their California neighbors at the same age. The Okinawan centenarians that Makoto Suzuki studied for 40 years were largely medication-free into their 90s, not because they had access to better medicine, but because the conditions requiring medication had not developed. If your dry mouth started around the same time you began a new prescription, that connection is almost certainly not a coincidence. Write down every medication and supplement you take and ask your pharmacist specifically whether any combination could be causing or worsening dry mouth overnight. Cause 2. Sleep apnea. 39 million Americans who have no idea. When sleep apnea occurs, your airway partially or fully collapses during sleep, forcing you to breathe through your mouth instead of your nose. Nasal breathing naturally maintains moisture throughout the mouth and throat. Mouth breathing evaporates saliva rapidly, which is exactly why you wake up with that intense dryness. Research published in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine showed that untreated sleep apnea in adults over 60 increases the risk of stroke by 60% and the risk of significant heart disease by 40%. The blue zone data on sleep is consistent across all 5 populations. The Ikarian centenarians took an afternoon rest of approximately 30 minutes daily, a habit documented by the researchers as maintaining circadian rhythm integrity and sleep architecture quality that reduce the fragmented nighttime sleep that drives apnea events. The Okinawan Moai, the lifelong social group of 5, Reduce the anxiety and chronic stress that contribute to the muscle tension patterns associated with airway collapse during sleep. Let me describe someone I will call Elena. 67 years old, retired teacher. 3 years of severe morning dry mouth, every oral spray on the market. Her dentist flagged increasing tooth decay. When she finally had a thorough evaluation, the dry mouth connected to a pattern her husband had noticed for years. She stopped breathing briefly during sleep. Moderate obstructive sleep apnea. After beginning CPAP therapy, her morning dry mouth resolved almost completely within 6 weeks. Her blood pressure, which had been creeping upward for 2 years, also improved noticeably within 3 months. If you snore loudly, if your partner has ever noticed you stop breathing during the night, or if you consistently wake up exhausted despite sleeping a full night, your dry mouth may be the least serious symptom you should be paying attention to. Subscribe to Longevity Code. Every week we decode one longevity population, one mechanism, one system. Always peer-reviewed, always practical. Always something you can start this week. Cause 3. Blood sugar. The signal hiding in plain sight. Elevated blood sugar causes the kidneys to pull fluid from tissues throughout the body in an attempt to dilute and flush out excess glucose. This creates systemic dehydration, which directly reduces saliva production. A 2021 study from the National Institutes of Health found that 83% of people with poorly controlled type 2 diabetes reported frequent dry mouth as an ongoing symptom. Approximately 1 in 3 adults with diabetes in the United States is currently undiagnosed. They have the condition and do not know it. The Blue Zone data on blood sugar is the most consistent finding across all 5 populations. The Okinawan centenarians built their caloric foundation around purple sweet potato with a glycemic index of 44, producing glucose curves that never created the osmotic dehydration that high postprandial blood sugar triggers. Harahachi-bu, stopping at 80% fullness, further prevented the glycemic loading that even low glycemic foods can produce in excess quantity. The result was fasting glucose and insulin profiles that researchers consistently found remarkable in people in their 80s and 90s. If you also experience frequent urination, unusual fatigue, blurred vision, or slow healing cuts alongside your morning dry mouth, prioritize a fasting blood sugar test and HbA1c this week. The HbA1c gives a 3-month average of blood sugar levels. It takes less than 5 minutes and could catch a developing problem that your dry mouth has been quietly signaling for months. Cause 4. Chronic dehydration. Why thirst stops working after 60. As we age, the sensation of thirst becomes significantly dulled. Your body can be operating at a meaningful fluid deficit and simply not send you the warning signal it used to. Research from the European Journal of Nutrition confirmed that adults over 65 are chronically underhydrated compared to younger adults, often with no sensation of thirst whatsoever. The Blue Zone populations were chronically well hydrated, not through deliberate tracking, but through food and beverage cultures that delivered fluid automatically. The Nicoyan centenarians drank water from limestone-filtered sources naturally high in calcium and magnesium. The Ikarian elders consumed wild herbal teas throughout the day: sage, rosemary, sideritis, replacing coffee with beverages that delivered polyphenols alongside fluid. The Okinawans consumed miso soup at every meal. The Sardinian centenarians consumed minestrone di legumi daily, a high water content meal that delivered substantial fluid alongside fiber and minerals. None of these populations were tracking hydration. Their food culture was delivering it automatically. Begin drinking approximately 500 milliliters of water spread across the 2 hours before bed. Increase total daily water intake to at least 2 liters spread throughout the day. Never wait for thirst as your signal. That system is simply not as reliable as it used to be. Cause 5. Systemic inflammation suppressing the salivary glands. The salivary glands are acutely sensitive to systemic inflammatory signals. Chronic low-grade inflammation, the kind that produces no fever, no specific pain, nothing dramatic enough to send you to a doctor, progressively suppresses salivary gland function and reduces output during sleep when the inflammatory burden is highest. A 2024 review published in the Journal of Integrative Dermatology found that traditional diets from longevity regions, including Okinawa and the Mediterranean blue zones, reduced inflammatory markers IL-6 and TNF-alpha, the same cytokines that suppress glandular function, including salivary production. The fermented foods, legumes, olive oil, wild herbs, and omega-3 rich fish that characterize every blue zone dietary pattern were simultaneously reducing the inflammatory burden that chronic dry mouth reflects. There is also a specific autoimmune condition worth knowing about, Sjögren's syndrome, which directly attacks the glands responsible for producing both saliva and tears. 9 out of 10 people diagnosed are women, and the average age of diagnosis falls in the late 50s and early 60s. If your dry mouth comes paired with persistent dry, gritty eyes or unexplained joint pain, discuss Sjögren's syndrome specifically with your doctor. The 5-step protocol. Step 1. The medication audit. Write down every prescription and supplement you take and bring the list to your next pharmacist appointment. Ask specifically whether any combination could be causing or worsening dry mouth overnight, and whether timing or substitution could reduce the effect. Step 2. The sleep assessment. For the next 7 nights, note each morning whether your mouth was open when you woke, whether you feel genuinely rested, and ask a bed partner to listen for snoring or breathing pauses. If you see a pattern, ask your primary care doctor for a sleep study referral. Many insurance plans cover these fully for patients over 60. Step 3. Blood sugar check. If you have not had a fasting glucose or HbA1c test in the past year, schedule one now. Do not wait for other symptoms to accumulate. Step 4. Deliberate hydration. 2 liters daily, spread throughout the day. Herbal tea, broth, and water all count. Reduce intake in the 2 hours before bed to minimize night waking. Step 5. Immediate overnight relief while you investigate the root cause. A mouth rinse or oral gel containing xylitol used right before bed provides moisture and mild antibacterial protection. Avoid any mouthwash containing alcohol, which significantly worsens dryness. Morning dry mouth is common, but common and normal are 2 different things. In most cases, it is pointing directly at something specific and addressable. The centenarians who never developed it were not lucky. They were living in ways that made all 5 underlying conditions structurally improbable. Comment below with one word: medication, sleep, sugar, or hydration. Whichever cause you suspect most applies to you. I read every comment and it shapes what this channel covers next. Subscribe to Longevity Code. Next week, another mechanism, another blue zone population, another signal your body has been sending that the standard medical conversation has not had time to explain.